Think about it, there's 12.8 million people that live in this state, so it actually doesn't go far enough. But we're very grateful that the governor proposed an ambitious budget. Think about it this way. There's 194 line items in the budget where the funds were increased. And they were mostly increased to avoid cuts in programs where if funds weren't increased, inflation would have eaten into the programs and services to children and seniors and families would have been cut. So there's 194 line item increases, and a quarter of those benefit children. And we're going to tell you about those tonight. One of the things to think about also in the governor's budget is how is it funded? Because, you know, one of the biggest questions that happened one of the biggest questions raised after the budget was released today from the opposition on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans from the House and Senate, they asked a good question. How are you going to pay for it? And what the governor proposed was some new taxes on marijuana, taxes on what is called skilled games of chance. And if you can define that, you win $1 million. And also streamlining corporate taxes and cutting corporate loopholes. In fact, there's $900 million in new taxes in this budget to make it possible to avoid cuts and meet obligations to the Commonwealth. And in addition, the budget taps the reserves that the state has. Citizens in Pennsylvania may not be aware, but we're sitting on $7 billion a year tax dollars, and the governor proposed to put them to work. And again, they avoid cuts, and they make it possible for the governor and the legislature and all of us to say we're living up to our constitutional obligation to fund our schools. Now, there's a lot of reaction to the budget today. We're going to take you right to the Capitol and hear from our Capitol correspondent, David, who had some lawmakers on the record.
Live from the Phil. Let's hear from David.
Thanks, Anella. I'm here in the Capitol after the governor's budget address. Earlier, we got some reactions from lawmakers. This is David Menendez with CFN News with Rep. Kincaid from the 20th District in Harrisburg. So, we just heard the budget address by the governor. There's a lot in there. What do you think? What is your reactions? Is it your dream budget, or do we need to take a nap?
I think after the length of that speech, we're all going to need a nap. But there's some good stuff in there. There's some stuff I think we really need to work on.
I'm here in Harrisburg with Rep. Paul Friel in his office from the 26th District. So, the governor just gave his budget. It promises investments in education and health for kids. What's on your wish list?
More money. No, in all seriousness, though, we need to invest more in early childhood education. I think the place that I think we've missed as a Commonwealth is really pre-K, early childhood education, preparing kids coming into school. It'll pay big dividends later on, and I would like to see that reflected in our budget and see some more money go in there.
I'm here with Rep. Fiedler from the 184th. Assuming that the budget gets through, are we going to wind up in a reality show, or are we going to get things done this year?
I hope we're going to get things done this year, and it's not just enough to do it this year. We need to make sure we fulfill our obligation to the youth and the children of Pennsylvania for many years to come. So this is the task in front of us. There's a lot of work to be done this budget season, but it's not going to be over when we finish the budget at the end of June. We're going to have a lot more to do. I think the court made it really clear that we've got a long way to go in Pennsylvania to make sure we're fully funding our education, and I'm excited for the work that's ahead.
I'm David Menendez, live with CFN. Back to you in the studio.
Well, that was fabulous, right? Hearing directly from our lawmakers. So, Donna, the governor said that Pennsylvania is on the rise, but what does that really mean for children? I think we should hear first about ECE, right? It all starts there.
Right, and any good news show starts with a traffic report, so
yes,
let's throw it to our traffic reporter.
Take a look at our map. As we can see, traffic has been backed up for years, with parents stuck without affordable and high-quality childcare. It's brake lights for miles because there's just not enough childcare teachers. We're seeing that the main delays are that childcare teachers are not earning enough. We know that half of the 54,000 early childhood educators in the Commonwealth are trying to exit their jobs. Sometimes these exits lead to road closures, with 2,200 childcare programs having closed since the start of the pandemic. Parents of the 97,000 children in subsidized childcare and 27,000 children in pre-K counts need early childhood education so they can go to work. This broken childcare system is costing Pennsylvania over $6 billion a year. To break the gridlock of the childcare staffing crisis, we need a recruitment and retention fund to bring childcare teachers back into the field or to keep them there. In today's budget, we saw a new lane opening up. The governor's budget puts childcare on track to resolution by including over $103 million in increased funds for both childcare, pre-K, and early intervention. That's $55 million dedicated to childcare, $17 million for pre-K counts, and $31 million for early intervention for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. 80% of those dollars are dedicated to the recruitment and retention of the workforce, which means money going right into the pockets of people working in early childhood programs. As our governor pointed out, this could enable 25,000 more children in Pennsylvania to access childcare. This is a promising start to our commute to a more sustainable early childhood sector. But we can't just clear the traffic. There's still a lot of road work that needs to be done. The good news, we've got a governor who knows how to fix roads and bridges. We need the governor and the General Assembly to remember that early childhood education not only builds the architecture of children's brains, it's also the infrastructure for our economy. Back to you.
Oh, what a great point. And it's interesting because Representative Friel, who was talking with David, our Capitol Hill reporter, really made the point that the Commonwealth needs to spend more money on early childhood education. So kudos to the governor for starting to do more. There's clearly much more to be done ahead. Early childhood education is one way when we fund it that families get support from the Commonwealth, but we have a special report from our reporter on the street, Dan O'Brien, on another issue that affects families that we didn't hear much about in today's budget. Turning to Dan.
We're here in Pennsylvania reporting on families going back to work just days after giving birth. In Pennsylvania, there is no guaranteed access to paid family and medical leave, even though the surrounding states around us do. And we're talking to parents right now. Excuse me, ma'am, what is your name?
Hi, I'm Cameron.
And why are you driving around with your baby? It looks like she was just born recently.
She was born 3 days ago. I have to go to work.
Why do you have to go to work so quickly?
Because I have to make money. I can't afford to not work.
You don't get access to paid family leave at your work?
No, I don't have paid leave.
How does that make you feel as a new mom?
It's sad. I don't get to stay home and bond with my baby. Instead, I have to bring her to work with me.
That seems like an important part of your early learning. Excuse me, how do you feel about your mom having to go back to work already instead of being able to take care of herself and bond with you at home? Thank you. There you have it. Pennsylvania, one of the oldest states in the country, still no access to paid family and medical leave. Parents are going back to work or they will lose their jobs. What are we doing here in America? What are we doing here in Pennsylvania? Dan O'Brien, CFNN.
You know, Donna, Dan raises a great point. Our neighboring states are doing so much on paid family leave, and we have done zero. Unbelievable. Well, that's not the only place that we need to do more in. In fact, K-12 education, out of the 51 plus states that we have, we are
Wait, how did we get more states?
Oh, Puerto Rico?
So let's stick with 50 for today.
All right, well, 50. We're still pretty far behind. We're at the 45th place. So I need to hear a weather update about how are we weathering things for kids. Priyanka, can you give us an update on how we're doing?
Thanks, Inella and Donna. Students have endured decades of persistent bad weather in schools due to underfunding. Teachers and principals have become used to carrying their umbrellas with them, and this budget signals that sunny days might be in the future. First, let's discuss the governor's proposed over $500 million increase in funding that targets the lowest wealth school districts. This is the second year in a row that the governor is prioritizing increased resources for our underfunded school districts that serve 70% of Pennsylvania kids. Clouds are slowly clearing, and there is some hope for some sun in the months ahead if lawmakers are able to negotiate a deal that builds on what the governor proposed. However, without a clear timeline for the rest of the funds to come through, these weather patterns won't change fast enough for some school districts who don't yet have predictability in funds. So let's zoom in on some regions to see how the funding pattern is impacting them. First, here in the Southeast, of Pennsylvania, we do have some varied weather patterns. Look at the different colors on the map. The darker ones are the most underfunded school districts. So Philadelphia, of course, is deeply underfunded, and this year they would benefit from $155 million in much needed funds. That could hire up to 2,000 teachers if they chose to spend it that way. And it's not just Philadelphia. Many of these outlying areas in the suburbs of Philadelphia would also be helped by the budget proposal. It looks like it could get a little less stormy up here in Bensalem, which would receive $2.2 million, doubling the increase they got last year. And looking over to Norristown, this school district could receive $6.7 million new dollars, which would support, for example, hiring 14 new reading specialists like they did this year. So let's move over to the source of the storm, central Pennsylvania in the Harrisburg region. Let's see how the school districts here would fare. Mifflin County School District, for example, would receive $2.8 million of new funds, again doubling the investment from last year. And it's looking particularly cloudy up in the northeast region of Pennsylvania, where we can see a large cluster of deep underfunding in the rural districts in the Schuylkill Valley and north of that. For example, in the Wilkes-Barre area, last year they recently infused one of their most struggling school districts with additional teachers and coaches. And I'm sure they would do that great things with this year's funds of over $9 million. As Governor Shapiro said today, sometimes solving problems costs money, and sometimes it requires reform. So we're happy to see that in addition to the increase in the funds he proposed, the governor has also shown us a way that we can spend our existing education funds better. He's proposing that we would save nearly $400 million by clearing out the air pollution that is wasteful cyber spending. So in combination, there's almost $900 million unlocked for our schools. Listen, it's been raining for a long time in Pennsylvania's underfunded schools, and we're glad that the governor is dipping into the rainy day fund to begin clearing the air. Quality is also improving thanks to some of the other investments that our schools need. Look at the 5-day forecast to see these additional items. It's about $160 million in increases across basic education funding, special education funding, school facilities, school meals, and teacher professional development funding. So the key takeaway here is that across the state of Pennsylvania, these storms are quite erratic, and they seem to be an unnatural weather pattern. It looks like it might be something man-made. So hopefully, the leaders in the Pennsylvania Senate and House can come together and find something that begins to truly clear the air once and for all. Otherwise, these storms could last upwards of 8 more years. And I don't know if our state's children can handle that. The governor has begun to shift the weather patterns by directing the great majority of new state funds to the lowest wealth school districts. Back to you at the news desk.
Thank you, Priyanka. You know, during the governor's budget address, and I'll read this, he said, over the past 2 years, we haven't shied away from hard conversations or solving complex problems. Case in point, how we reformed the way we fund public education. What he meant by that is we, as in the Republicans and the Democrats, working together. And as Priyanka's report just showed us, rural school districts, as well as urban and suburban school districts, benefited from a plan that, as the governor said, made a commitment to put a record amount of money in public education and create a brand new formula that drives money out to the schools that need it most. As a taxpayer, that sounds good to me. So the governor also said that time is money, and what he meant is that businesses who are waiting for permits to be issued are losing money, and he talked about lots of reforms to how the state will operate to help businesses grow. And sometimes children are losing time because they're locked up in facilities because we are not spending enough money to make sure that they get on the right path in life. Tonight we have a special report from Stephanie, our investigative reporter on juvenile justice.
Thank you, Donna. Andrew Reed, age 12, was arrested by his local police for stealing a hoagie from Wawa. Or if you're watching from Western PA, he stole a schmegel from Sheetz. If Andrew had had access to diversion, he could have worked out an arrangement with the store manager and attended an educational program about theft without being prosecuted in court or having a juvenile record. With a substantial investment in diversion and requiring it for minor crimes like retail theft or school fights, we can help kids learn from their mistakes and stay on track for a successful future. Today was not only Governor Shapiro's budget address, but it was also his major policy address. Unfortunately, he didn't talk about budget increases or policies to expand diversion or community-based alternatives to incarceration, programs that Andrew would have benefited from. Counties need these programs to keep kids out of facilities, and we're just not seeing the investment. A bright spot is that Governor Shapiro did include a $20 million increase to the violence intervention and prevention programs to reduce gun violence and provide kids with after-school programs to keep them engaged and promote their academic, social, and emotional growth. Extracurricular activities are essential to preventing kids' involvement in the juvenile system. But this investment doesn't go far enough. More than 1,500 Pennsylvania children were locked up in juvenile facilities in 2023, where emotional and physical abuse is all too common. We know that many young people in these facilities are there for non-felonies or for their first offense. Locking them up doesn't help them or make communities safer. This 13% increase in incarceration is absolutely connected to a lack of resources to keep kids at home and in their communities. The legislature needs to step it up with both funding and legislation to keep kids out of juvenile institutions and adult prisons. In addition to investing in community-based programs, the General Assembly can make sure Pennsylvania courts are only incarcerating kids when their behavior poses a threat to other people. This will keep kids at home and on track in school while connecting them with diversion and other programs in their neighborhoods. Kids should never be locked up solely as a punishment or because they need mental health support. For kids like Andrew, who are now entangled in the system, there are common sense ways to help them learn from their mistakes and make things right. Harrisburg should be listening. Back to you at the news desk, Dinella and Donna.
Production tonight on a special report on the governor's budget is made possible by the generosity and support of our partners at PhillyCam and also by the Family Care Coalition. We have a commercial from them coming up. After that, we'll return back for more in-depth reporting on the budget.
We're Americans. We can't take a day off if our kid is sick, so we send them to daycare and get everyone else's kids sick.
We're Americans. Our childcare costs more than our rent.
We're Americans. We expect women to work like they don't mother and mother like they don't work.
We're Americans. We have the worst maternal death rate of developed countries and no postpartum care. Because if you have a baby, that's on you.
We're Americans. We believe that paid family leave will hurt the economy, even though research shows that it would increase our GDP by 5%.
So we have a big week in sports this week, Donna. It is the Super Bowl. Woo-hoo! And the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl.
Go Birds!
Go Birds! So, also, there's something else spewing up in Harrisburg. Team Shapiro is talking a lot about child health. I think we need a really sports segment on what's going on in child health.
Yep.
So, Deanna, can you tell us a little bit more about what's happening and how do we prepare for the long game?
Thanks, Inella, and thanks, Donna. Well, we've got a mix of offense and defense this year. Parents in Pennsylvania continue to be on the defense on the sports ball field of their child's health care coverage, where 147,000 kids in Pennsylvania still don't have protection from the health insurance linebackers. Pennsylvania continues to have the 5th highest number of uninsured children in the nation. But our head coach, Governor Josh Shapiro, is working to turn around part of that playbook, especially around hospitals having a losing season. He recognized that we have to address the significant structural challenges that hospitals across the Commonwealth are facing right now. He's committed to working with hospitals to strengthen their play, including working across teams to encourage the legislature to fix private equity issues to help with hospital closures. And we've seen the impact of those private equity issues closing hospitals right here in Delaware County. Up front, Team Shapiro is investing $10 million in stabilizing hospitals, which will allow us to leverage $26 million in federal funding. Additionally, there's a $10 million investment specified for rural hospitals and a $20 million investment in new funding to provide patient safety and services in hospitals. Now, these are great short yardage plays, but the better play downfield is to make sure that hospitals are actually being compensated for the medical care they provide, which currently is not happening for the 147,000 uninsured kids in Pennsylvania. Now, over on the mental health playing field, we've got some strong common sense offense plays, including a $2.5 billion investment to fund the medical assistance program, What a contrast with the team down in Washington who are threatening to slash Medicaid assistance. The big win here really goes to workforce investments, totaling $20 million in increased benefits for healthcare workers to support better wages, paid time off, loan repayment, and training programs. And this includes a specific set aside for rural communities. Now listen, we know the budget address is more than a statement on appropriation levels. It's also a statement on policy. And one clear policy play the Shapiro team got right is tasking the Pennsylvania Department of Health with expanding postpartum depression screening efforts for new moms, ensuring timely and equitable interventions. With 40% of kids in Pennsylvania saying that they're either sad or depressed on most days, this is a key policy play missing here, ensuring kids have access to the mental health services they need when they need them. And Pennsylvania is falling behind other teams in the league. Conditions on the field need to be improved so kids can perform at their fullest potential. Despite the treacherous field conditions, there's some bright spots though. There's a $20 million investment in county mental health services. The Shapiro team invested another $5 million to support walk-in centers for those who are in critical mental health crisis with a focus on underserved areas. And what we're especially excited about is a $10 million investment to sustain and expand the 988 Lifeline, which is a good move for Pennsylvania's future prospects because we know 2/3 of kids in Pennsylvania who die from suicide never received the mental health services they needed before it was too late. So while this looks like a slam dunk on the ball court, these investments aren't all specific to kids. The real long game here is going to require more coaching by the governor and House and Senate leadership to really deliver a big win for kids on mental health issues. Now on the lead game, kids and their parents are playing defense as lead poisoning gains steady traction, and coaches in Harrisburg are not going for the lead remediation gameplay or investing in public awareness to get ahead. Over 11,000 kids are still being poisoned by lead in Pennsylvania, and that number only includes the number of kids that are actually tested. Most kids in the Commonwealth, over 80% of them, don't even get tested. We didn't see any new investments here, and that leaves all the players unsure about the next best move and gives lead poisoning the real upper hand. Now, in a final mixed matchup, while we did see nearly a $1 million investment in viral hepatitis prevention, we'll want to keep a close eye on the opposing team of diseases that were previously dominated by vaccines, especially since the coaches in Washington clearly have taken their eye off the ball by taking our best defense weapons off the field in a bad way. That's all for sports. Back to you, Donna and Anela.
Wow, so that's a spectacular report from our health team. And so, that sort of rounds out what we want to share with you about the budget's impact on children, but we want to add a little bit of closing context. The governor also made a very strong pitch in the budget address to increase the minimum wage. And it was perhaps the second strongest moment in the address, the first one we'll close with, but where he basically said, in every state around us, you can get paid more than you get paid working in Pennsylvania, even in West Virginia. And so the governor made a very strong pitch for that. He talked about how the state is going to reform its services for businesses, created the Lightning campaign around energy to make Pennsylvania an energy hub and create energy jobs. And he also talked about the importance of housing. Now, all of these things can accrue benefits to children. A more vibrant business sector, more resources for stable housing, a really expansive energy sector. These are great things for our kids as long as we start investing in them early so they can benefit from the jobs that are created and make sure that their future is connected to these investments. The governor also, at one moment, challenged his colleagues about the amount of support that he was putting out for farmers. And he said, you know what, I don't understand why everybody in this chamber isn't clapping for the investments that we're making in farmers. Pennsylvania is a rural state, and one of the things we heard today was from early childhood education to K-12 education to the plight of rural hospitals to children in rural communities who might end up locked up. The needs are the same as you see in large cities like Philadelphia or struggling suburbs around the cities. Pennsylvania's lawmakers have an opportunity to work in a bipartisan way and deliver for kids. It will not mean that we wreck the fiscal stability of the state. We have $7 billion in the rainy day fund. This budget includes nearly $1 billion in tax cuts. We have some choices to make. Are we going to continue to meet the needs of Pennsylvanians and put children first? or are we going to capitulate to the naysayers and the doomsdayers? We're with children. We're the optimists, and we want to see things improve. We want you to learn a little bit more about the children in our region. In fact, over the next 6 weeks, we're releasing reports. And if you live in Bucks County, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, or Philadelphia, we'll have a special report for you on how your children are doing. And that way you're going to have a much deeper sense of what the state budget means for you, and also what your county government and local governments can do to help children, as well as the state government. And ever more important, we have to be vigilant about what's happening in in Washington, and make sure that they don't pull the rug out from underneath us, because we are working to make progress for children in Pennsylvania, and we need to continue to stay focused on the threats to children that come out of the nation's capital. But today we reported on the state capitol, and there was a lot of good news and a lot of hope and a lot more we can do to make the lives of children better. What do you have, Inella, as you're closing here?
It's actually a very special time for Children First Network News. We're celebrating 45 years of doing work on the behalf of kids. That's older than me. How about you, Donna?
Well, I wish.
Well, I hope that we can do it for another 45 years, but we need you to be a part of that as well. Through volunteering, through donating dollars, it allows us to move the needle for kids. And Governor Josh Shapiro said we're on the horizon, so let's lift the tide for kids.
Well, that's it for Children First Network News. Stay tuned. Every week we will send you an update on the battle to win these gains for kids and more. And join us every day at Children First on Facebook, on whatever the social media platforms are called that aren't Twitter anymore, and LinkedIn. And just make sure you stay in touch, and make sure you tell your lawmaker what you support, what you want to see more of, and join the fight. That's it.
Go Birds!